Everybody, how's it going? It's me, Logan, aka Suburban Yinzer. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about my dad's side of the family. So my ancestors from the south side of Pittsburgh. And many of yins might be wondering why I'm going to be talking about them specifically. Well, today is Veterans Day. And I wanted to share many of these ancestors with yins because I'm very proud of them. I'm proud of both sides of my family, to be honest. But when it comes to the south side, it's the neighborhood. Okay, on my dad's side of the family, it's called the neighborhood. And what I noticed is that Southside has such a prominent involvement in war over the centuries since the founding of basically the Grand Army of the Republic from 1861 to 1865. So during the Civil War, all the way to World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Southside has always answered the call, especially on my dad's side of the family. But there is a specific piece of evidence that is amazing. I mean, yes, many other neighborhoods around Pittsburgh and the southwestern Pennsylvania area, yes, they contributed many of their sons, brothers, fathers to World War II and many other of the American wars. But when it comes to my dad's side of the family, I'm going to be specifying on south side, and I'm going to be talking about those ancestors specifically from, let's just say, South 25th, South 26th, all the way to South 27th, in those integrating streets like Larkin's Way, Sarah Street, Jane Street. So those intersections going through South 25th through South 27th, in those intersections, that is my dad's neighborhood. So my dad's side of the family, just a little bit of a background for many yins that don't know, my dad's side of the family has lived in that general area since 1847, since before the Civil War. And my dad has three ancestors. Before we get into the main bulk of the video, my dad has three ancestors that fought in the Civil War that were from Southside, and at the time it was called Birmingham Borough. That is my fourth great grandfather, Henry Christian, my third great uncle, Reinhard Christian, who was shot in the leg and then died during the Civil War, and then my third great grandfather, Henry Riebel. These were all German immigrants who served in the 74th Pennsylvania, who are from the south side of Pittsburgh. Now, speeding up and fast forwarding to World War II. So this is the bulk of the veterans. This is the bulk of the ancestors on my dad's side of the family. So if we're going to piece this together, we're going to have to go through each person. We're going to have to go through every single branch on the family tree on my dad's side of the family to piece this together. So bear with me. So when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941, which then escalated our involvement into World War II, which we were already semi-involved, and there was already a build-up, but the bombing and the attack of Pearl Harbor in Hawaii actually escalated that and really dragged us into World War II. Now, when the south side of Pittsburgh found out about this, and my south side ancestors found out about this complete blindsided ambush in Hawaii, they answered the call. Okay, they really did. Okay, it wasn't like, oh, I don't want to go. I'm scared. It was, they were just pounding down the doors of the recruiting offices. They wanted to go. Okay, and that was throughout the whole city of Pittsburgh. But to be specific about my dad's side of the family, that was a general, basically, requirement during World War II, is that if you were from the neighborhood, per se, there was no, well, maybe I'll go, maybe I'll just work at J&L, maybe I'll just, work here and stay here and make, the stuff. No, it wasn't like you were going to compromise or stay back behind the lines. You were going to go. If you were medically fit, okay, and medically competent to go, you're going to do it, okay? So the first person that is involved in World War II, who was already in the military before Pearl Harbor, was my dad's grand uncle, so my great uncle, Joe Auria. Joe was, or Uncle Joe as we call him, he's 100% Italian, okay? He enlisted in the Army in November of 1941, so almost a month before the attack. He was already in the Army, but then he was discharged from the Army because of his type 1 diabetes, and then he re-enlisted in the Merchant Marines, where he would serve for probably another, I'd say, 15 years until his death in 1960. So Uncle Joe Auria was the first one in my South Side family to be in World War II. Now, being retroactive to my great-grandfather Joe Gelati, Joe the shoemaker on 27th and Jane, the corner of 27th and Jane, to go back to that video for a second, Joe Gelati raised his sisters and brothers-in-law in that house on 2701 Jane Street. I'm going to pop it up in the video. Now, during World War II, there is a picture of a banner, of a Southside banner going across from my great-grandparents, or my great-grandfather's shoe shop, so Joe's shoe store, was in the corner. So I'm going to pull it up on the screen. As you can see, the banner's going across. This picture was taken in the winter of 1942. So probably the beginning of the South Side involvement in World War II. As you can see, there's not too many stars on the banner. But as the war escalated and more boys and men were going into the war, they would add the star. So each star represents a soldier, a sailor, or a Marine that is involved in World War II that is from the neighborhood. Okay, so when we're talking about the neighborhood, we're approximately talking about, like I said, South 25th to South 27th Streets, and then Jane Street, Sarah Street, Larkins Way, etc. Okay, and so they would add these stars, but if a man or a boy was deceased and they died in combat or died in the service, they would then put a gold star, so basically putting a gold thread over that blue star on the banner. So my dad told me that his grandmother, Grandma Gelati, my great-grandmother, told him that during World War II, okay, in the beginning, there wasn't too many stars, as you can see in the winter of 1942. But by the summer of 1945, that banner had to be edited. I think the same banner was still applied, but I feel like they added more stars. I don't know if they made the banner bigger, but my great-grandma said that that banner was full of stars. Okay, there wasn't an inch on that banner that didn't have a star on it. That's how many boys and men went into World War II from the neighborhood. Okay, so Uncle Joe's the first. So then you have my granduncles, Kenny and Reg Joyce. Kenny goes into the Army during World War II, and my Uncle Regis Joyce, goes in the Marines in World War II. Reg was then in January of 1942. Kenny was in the spring of 1942. So by the spring of 1942, okay, you get more enlistments. So now you're getting Joe Auria's younger brother, Uncle Sam. So Sam Auria enlists. And then you get Uncle Chuck, Charles Auria. He enlists. So now you got Sam and you got Charles, a.k.a. Chuck Auria, going into World War II in the Army. Then we speed it up to the Roaches. The Roaches are now going in. So my grandfather's Mooch, Joyce's first cousins, you have, let me see, you got Mike Roach going into the Army. You got his brother Martin Roach going into the Army. So you got the Roaches up on Josephine Street. So that actually classifies as sort of the neighborhood too, because it's Mary Street, Josephine Street. So like I forgot to say that. So you got Sarah, Mary, Jane, Josephine. Those streets retroactively are the neighborhood, okay? So you got the Roaches on Josephine Street enlisting in World War II too. Then don't forget about Henry Yamrozik, my granduncle, so my grandmother's brother-in-law, Uncle Henry. He's not blood relation, but he is still part of the neighborhood and still part of the family tree. He enlists in the Army. Well, he was actually in, I believe, the Merchant Marines before he went into the Army. So he was in the Merchant Marines in 1944, discharged, then re-enlisted in the Army in 45. So he classifies as part of the neighborhood that joined into the late stages of World War II. And let me see, then we got Uncle Mike. So Michael Hurka, my other great uncle, he is related to the Auria and the Gelati side of the family. So Uncle Mike was from Larkins Way. He then enlisted in World War II in the Army. And I feel that was at the late stage, like Uncle Henry, in 1945, 1946, 1947, during the occupation stage of World War II. And let's not forget, I saved him for last for a reason. My grandfather, Jerome Milton Mooch, his nickname was Mooch, Joyce. He enlisted in the Navy on July 9th, 1945, and he was inducted into active service on September 18th, 1945. And my grandfather, Mooch, living on Jane Street, so the Joyces are on Jane Street, the Aurias are on Jane Street, so the Joyces are 2708 Jane Street, And then the Aurias are on 2701 Jane Street. And now you wonder why my grandfather Mooch, how he met and married my grandmother Rose. Jane Street. Okay, they were neighbors for decades, and so were their ancestors. So my grandfather Mooch continued or started his 30-year military career in the Navy and the Air Force on July 9th, 1945 to September 1st, 1975. Okay, so my grandfather was one of the last of the Southside neighborhood boys or men to go into World War II, along with Uncle Henry and Uncle Mike. And so these are just my general, let's just say, close family that were involved in World War II. Now, I got many other distant cousins, and you know, the Richards, okay, the Richard side of the family, they're related to the Barantes. If you ever heard of the name Barante or Richard, that is related to the Auria side of the family. And so, while my ancestors are enlisting, they're not just the only ones in the neighborhood enlisting in World War II. There's many of their friends and schoolmates and neighborhood friends that grew up with them for years. They're also enlisting in World War II. Okay, World War II was like the magnet for the neighborhood. World War II drawed in so many of the boys that grew up in Southside from the 1910s, 20s, and 30s. Okay, these young men were so hungry and so committed to serving their country, not only in Europe and not only in Japan or Asia, but also all over the world. These men from the south side of Pittsburgh, from this little corner of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, this little sliver along the Monongahela River, hundreds and hundreds of them, I'm talking hundreds, ran to the enlistment offices, no matter if it was the Army, the Marines, the Navy, the Army Air Corps, the Coast Guard, the Merchant Marines, it didn't matter. These men wanted to serve their country, and they were from the south side of Pittsburgh. Most of them quit their jobs, predominantly at Jones and Laughlin Steel Mill, a very good job at the time in the 40s. They quit their jobs like that to serve their country for 4 to 5 years. In my personal opinion, there's nothing more honorable than doing that. They were willing to sacrifice their life for their country. They were willing to throw away the rest of their lives. Most of them had 30, 40, 50 years still left on this planet. And they were willing to sacrifice all of that, sacrifice a pension at Jones and Laughlin, sacrifice a wife and kids and grandchildren for this country. And that is why on Veterans Day today, November 11th, I am honored and proud to share my Southside ancestors, because my dad's side of the family, not only my dad's, but also my mom's, but specifically in this video, my dad's side of the family from the south side of Pittsburgh, they gave so much of themselves in World War II. And not just the blood relations, not just the in-laws or the blood relations, all of the neighborhood boys. Okay, if any of your grandfathers, fathers, uncles, brothers, I don't care who they are, if any of them are from the south side of Pittsburgh in general, you just know what I'm talking about. Our family members and our ancestors were so patriotic. I'm not saying Southside is the end-all, say-all of patriotism and devotion to World War II. But what I'm trying to say is that Southside, that little tiny neighborhood in the south side of Pittsburgh, okay, along the Monongahela River, sacrificed and gave so much to this country. And it is such an honor and a privilege to share their faces and share their names and share their service with Yins, because many Yins can relate. If you have ancestors or family members that served in the Army, Marines, Navy, or Army Air Corps, Coast Guard, Merchant Marines during World War II, Yins know what I'm talking about, okay? It's not rocket science. These were lower income, predominantly, lower income, middle class boys from the south side of Pittsburgh. They didn't have nothing. They lived in Southside row houses in the neighborhood, okay? They had nothing, okay, most of them. But they were willing to sacrifice their lives for this country, okay? That is so honorable, so courageous, and I'm privileged and proud to share them with Yins and to brag about them, because why not? Today's Veterans Day, and they deserve to be acknowledged and honored on this day and every other day, in my opinion. But especially November 11th, Veterans Day, today is their day. So if you have veterans that served in the military, in any other war, please honor them and remember them. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Peace.